this video, I'm going over my very first impressions of Black Ops 6 Zombies from the one Zombies game I got to play at Treyarch Studios last week. By now, you would have seen some Black Ops 6 Zombies gameplay, you'd have heard a ton of the details and changes they're making in the game, and if you haven't, I've got a ton of videos on the channel linked below. But as part of a very small group that's actually played the game, how did it feel? How did it play? All of those opinions are going to be given to you from someone that has played the game, but please understand that I've only played one game for 45 minutes in 4-player co-op. So it really is a surface level first impressions, as there's a lot more layers to Black Ops 6 Zombies that were disabled, including the main Easter egg and any side Easter eggs, super overpowered Gobblegums, as well as any other augment upgrades. And one singular game of Zombies is not quite enough to base a true impression on everything we're going to be getting this year. And this video is going to be a long one, and I know there's going to be some things that I'm going to regret not having said when I come to edit this video. I'm going to try and cover absolutely everything, including the good, the bad, and the ugly. And let's first talk about the good, because there is a lot of good here. Now, the biggest question on everyone's minds is when you see the game, it does look a lot like Cold War Zombies. So the big question is, does it feel like Cold War Zombies? And the answer is yes and no. It looks a lot like Cold War Zombies, but it plays even smoother and it looks way better than Cold War did. Combining it with that new Omni movement system, the overall movement and flow of the game felt very, very smooth. It visually looked like an upgraded Cold War Zombies, but mechanically and the way that it played and felt, it was very smooth. Definitely an upgrade from Cold War. So if you like the way that Zombies looked and felt in Cold War, then you're absolutely gonna love this. And if you didn't like Cold War Zombies, there's a lot of improvement and refinement in this Zombies where I think you will actually be pleasantly surprised. And I think along with some of the new significant zombie systems they have this year, such as the save and quit feature for solo play, which is how it sounds. You can literally pause a solo game, save the progress you were at, including the round, your pack-a-punch level, your armor, your points, your salvage. You can literally save and quit and pick the game up the very next day. You can only do that for one game. There's only one save slot, but this is game changing. And that if you disconnect from a co-op game, no matter what round it's on, you can still rejoin. Those are just two massive things that I think are going to make such an improvement to the way people enjoy Zombies. Let's talk about the map environment, because the Terminus map is significantly better than almost every Cold War Zombies map in terms of the atmosphere and the way the map feels. Treyarch mentioned that they have heard the feedback from Cold War about the boring facility style maps, and that they've gone back to the drawing board here and made a map that feels a lot more thrilling, sort of bordering on the horror aspect, with the fact that there are randomized ambient encounters that will happen every time you play the map. Opening certain doors, you will see different zombie encounters, which makes the map feel a lot more alive and a lot more interesting. Even though the map is set during the early hours of the morning, it's technically still nighttime, the map was still bright, but had a really good atmosphere. They also mentioned that this is the biggest round-based Zombies map that they've ever made, but I do feel when you play this map, as I think they're considering also the water surrounding all of the map, which is all playable. Some sections of the map are pretty wide and open for you to train up the zombies, but there's also a lot of more narrow areas as well. And for this to be a launch map, I feel it's important that they don't make it too complicated, and the layout for this map isn't too complicated. It's quite similar to D Machine in some ways, where you're opening up doors, and the way the power works is that there are 3 machines, one in the spawn room itself. There's another to the left where the Juggernog perk machine also is, so you can get Juggernog very early on. And then the third machine is underground under the prison in this lab. And again, Treyarch have not wasted any of the little details around the map, as there are tons of computer monitors that have the Project Janus logo on, of course tying in all the story. So the map is actually telling you a bit of a backstory that I don't think we really got on the other Cold War Zombies maps before. And when you activate that third power, it activates a ton of these sort of test experiment zombies that break out of the glass. But we had none of this environmental storytelling in Cold War, so it's really good to see. Now, one obvious thing you've noticed in all of the gameplay provided is that there is no HUD. And that's because you can now change the HUD to have whatever you want, or have absolutely nothing. Just like with multiplayer, Treyarch has preset HUD, so you can choose exactly what you want, such as the OG HUD, then a legacy HUD, which is more Black Ops 3 style, no HUD whatsoever, and even a streamer HUD, so that there's a perfect placement size for a face cam to go if you're streaming zombies, which I think is a fantastic thing for them to consider. But I'm sure you're curious to know what the default HUD was like, and it was very similar to multiplayer in the fact that it was very clean and very minimal. You had the field upgrade in the bottom right like we're used to, and then there is that section on the right that shows your 3 Gobblegums, although it's a very small sort of minimized view where you have to press right on the D-pad to open up that menu, and then you scroll through top to bottom to select the Gobblegum that you want to activate, which in the heat of gameplay could be slightly finicky, a little bit cumbersome, but once you get used to it, I'm sure we'll be activating Gobblegums super quick. Perks were on the bottom of the screen in the exact same position that they were in Black Ops Cold War. Minimap was there in the top left. It was a circular minimap, which again is that default, but you can choose to change that if you want. I assume if you choose that legacy style HUD that's more Black Ops 3, it might just completely get rid of that minimap as well. Just like Cold War, the zombie health bars and damage numbers return, which I actually really like, but again, if you don't like that, you can turn them off completely, which is a really good thing. Now, whilst my use with the Gobblegum system was pretty limited, I'm so happy that the Gobblegum system is actually a better system in this game than it is in Black Ops 3 Zombies. They've simplified the types now of Gobblegum, so we simply have classic, megas, and whimsicals. When you hit the Gobblegum machine, you now no longer consume the Gobblegum immediately. You actually pocket it, and you can hold up to 3 Gobblegums and choose which one you want to activate, like the score streak system in multiplayer, and I think this worked incredibly well. I unfortunately didn't have any super OP Gobblegums to use in my playthrough. The most powerful one I had was Shields Up. Having the freedom to hold up to 3 Gobblegums at once and then choose which one you want at any time, it just felt like a really clever idea, something that almost feels like it should have been in the game in Black Ops 3. I only found about 2 Gobblegum machines around the map, but you hit them, and just like in Black Ops 3, it appeared the first hit in the round was absolutely free. I'm just so glad it's back. It didn't feel like a gimmick. It felt like it just belonged in Zombies, and I'm so happy and excited to see the full list of the Gobblegums that we're going to be getting. Now, another thing I thought was really good was Treyarch's new version of the permanent upgrade system that we saw in Cold War. If you don't remember, back in Black Ops Cold War, in every match you would earn a certain amount of Ethereum crystals that you could use to unlock small buffs on each of the perks, field upgrades, and every weapon class, giving the perks brand new abilities, also upgrading the amount of damage that certain weapon types will do, and eventually you'd max everything out and you'd be stronger. But eventually every player had that, so everyone was still on the same playing field, and you didn't even really realize you had these extra benefits. But in Black Ops 6, Treyarch has revitalized this with the augment system, where now you are choosing 2 different buffs to put on every perk and field upgrade and ammo mod from a pool of different selections, which means there's going to be a lot of flexibility and a lot of unique gameplay opportunities where I might be running something completely different to you, and you can mix these up at any point and basically change the way that some of the most fundamental things work. Like Juggernog, you can add Dying Wish as an ability onto that, which is incredible. But somehow there will be something that is just as OP as an alternative option instead. I'm also really happy that we have new zombie enemy types to deal with, because I don't really think we got too many new ones throughout Cold War, and seeing some of the same enemies in Modern Warfare Zombies, it's nice that there is some brand new variety here, with those vermin-like spider creatures that are so creepy and absolutely inspired by the spiders from Zetsubo no Shima. Kevin Drew directed that map, so it makes sense that he's brought that back, and there's a lot of creepy vibes with the way that the zombies are in this map, where you can feel it's definitely inspired. You can see in the B-roll that there is this massive abomination type zombie that's like an amalgamation of multiple zombies. We didn't actually fight that in our game, because that's a dynamic thing that can happen, where if you let the vermin go around and infect enough zombies, they eventually become that, which is pretty gross. But I'm really happy that there's a lot of different zombie types. Now, this feature didn't work in the build we were playing, but player-specific loot drops is incredible. I actually put this in a video a few months ago as a suggestion for Treyarch. I don't know if they saw it, but I'm so happy that that is now a thing, because it just means that no longer will there be randoms in your public game that are just going to be hoovering up all of your loot. It's something which I've always wanted to see in Zombies, and the fact they've actually made it possible is really good. We just didn't get a chance to really test it. The Wonder Weapon weapon, the Beam Smasher, looks absolutely awesome. None of our team managed to get it in the game, but there was another team behind us that did manage to get it from the mystery box, and believe me, I hit the mystery box a lot of times. I was just super unlucky. This thing looks really good. It looks like a combination of the Die Shockwave in terms of that main beam that can just absolutely obliterate zombies, and it seems that that might be the meta for the high rounds of the map, because we survived to about round 19. The team behind us got to round 22 and they were told that you got to wrap up the game, and that wonder weapon was still absolutely decimating zombies at Pack-a-Punch level 2. It just seems like a very well thought out wonder weapon. The fact that it has like an electric cherry style reload burst, it has that other mechanic which I'm not sure if that's going to be too useful, but it might be one of those cases where, just like the Ray K from Firebase Z, you don't expect the like less powerful ability to be the meta, but it's the combination of both that ends up making this wonder weapon super powerful. But I think going back to back with this game and Modern Warfare Zombies, the wonder weapons that Treyarch have come up with recently have been very good. The Scorcher was great, the Beam Smasher looks great, and there could be a separate wonder weapon on Liberty Falls that we've not seen yet either. Another thing I think is very good is that there are now Easter egg main quest rewards, and there's actually a set of rewards that are going to be on each map, and I really think that Treyarch were inspired by how DMZ had the weapon case extract rewards, where you had to extract a weapon case like 6 or 7 times to get all the rewards, and it sounds like you're going to have to do the Easter egg multiple times in order to get the full set of Easter egg quest rewards, which is really good, because outside of getting a completion medal, you've not really ever gotten anything as a reward for completing an Easter egg besides Perkaholic or something like that in the actual game. But these are rewards outside of it, and there's a set of them, so you're gonna have to do it multiple times, and I think that is really good. That's something that I've wanted for quite a few years, and that ties in as well with the fact that they already have a 100% completion reward available at launch, along with the return of Dark Ops and a mastery camo for zombies. They're just hitting the launch of this game with a lot to grind for, and I think that's really important. Normally it's just the mastery camo and that's it, but the fact there's a 100% completion reward, main quest rewards as well, that's really cool. Now, when we first heard that this game was online only, we were of course pretty worried, especially when it came to zombies, why you can't play this game in offline play. But this actually has some insane benefits that you've probably already realized from the reveal, but save and quit for solo is an insane feature for them to add. The fact that for the first time ever, zombies as a solo game actually will have a save game state, so you can quit the game and go back to exactly where you were the following day. This to me is one of the best reasons for why online only actually makes sense. If a feature like this wasn't in the game, then I would argue why online only for zombies is even a thing, but things like that are absolutely insane. We did point out though that there is a chance that this could be exploited, and they are already well aware of that, and they're going to make sure that any glitches and exploits related to saving and quitting and whatever will be mitigated, which is really good. But at its core, it's a feature that almost sounds too good to be true, but it's actually happening. And another thing that you might not realize with the online only thing is that because the game is now being handled on the server side, it actually takes a lot of stress off of the game itself. So a ton more zombies and entities can be present on the map at all times, and that was especially noticeable when we played in 4-player. A lot of the time I was actually separated from my team because I was just, you know, going around trying to see if I could discover as much as the map as possible, and it didn't feel like a ton of the zombies had like left me and were just with the other 3 on the other part of the map. It felt very balanced, and this map is pretty big. If you go off exploring, especially using that tactical raft to go to different islands and to go for the boat outside, there's a chance that if someone goes down on the main prison, you might not get to them in time, but I think there's enough tools provided by Treyarch to make that a reality. Like the tactical raft has different stations that you can immediately summon it to and from, which is really cool. There's lots of zip lines, and there's lots of areas where you can mantle over to go down levels very quickly. That was one thing I always enjoyed with D Machine, especially in that middle Pack-a-Punch area, was just how easy it was to mantle over objects and around stuff. It felt even smoother in this game. Another good is it felt like there wasn't any perks from Cold War that wasn't in this build that I played. It felt like every single perk, maybe 1 or 2 might have been missing, but all of the essential ones, as well as Elemental Pop, PhD Slider, and also the brand new Melee Macchiato perk, like they were all there. They all worked just like how we know and love. And Der Wonderfizz machine was there as well, but it was in a location where you can't really access it until after you've turned on the power. Now, another big thing that not everyone liked from Cold War was the loadout system. That is returning in Black Ops 6, but I think Treyarch have done an absolute wonder to make this feel like a more balanced system, because no longer is your loadout build the most OP weapon in the game that you're bringing in, because they have a new feature called zombie builds where you can literally build out every single meta loadout and have that as every version of each weapon in the game. So if you get it off the wall, if you get it from the mystery box, it will be that specific build, which is an inspiration from the wall kit system from Black Ops 3. I mean, none of us are ever going to say that was a bad system, so I'm so happy that they've really sort of looked at the loadout argument and they've gone, hey, let's now make it so every weapon has the chance to be the best version it can possibly be when you get it at any point, which is an absolute massive W. There's a lot of water in this map, and I felt going between the water and then going on land felt very natural. It didn't feel weird at all for that to be inside of a zombies map. And another thing that's really good is Treyarch have said that this map will have the most secrets and Easter eggs in any zombies map ever, rivaling the amount of Easter eggs that we had in Shadows of Evil. Considering how shallow the side Easter eggs were in pretty much every Cold War zombies map, this is music to our ears, and I'm just so excited that we're finally getting back to that sort of era where there are going to be a ton of small side Easter eggs to find, which is only ever a good thing. I just hope that following on from Cold War, they actually give us some better rewards this time, because a lot of the side Easter eggs in Cold War didn't actually give you a reward that felt worthy of the effort put in. And on topic of that, Treyarch have also said that the main quest difficulty for this game is supposedly going to be harder in Black Ops 6 than what it was in Cold War, which is obviously really good news to hear as well. Obviously, they want as many types of players as possible, both casual and hardcore, to enjoy this zombies game, and that's why they have the guided mode. But fundamentally, as long as the main Easter egg quests are difficult on every map, they're a lot more difficult than Cold War, then that's obviously a massive thing. And the last thing here on my list for good is that the trial machine returns, but it's actually improved now, where it now has progress shared between all players in the game. So if you're playing in a co-op game, every player is going to be able to get involved in the challenge. It's not going to be separate to each player. And we had some challenges like get 100 kills while crouched, but we only had a minute to do so. But you don't get penalized if you don't complete that 100 kill requirement. If you got 25, you get a partial reward of a pretty low rarity. If you get halfway, then obviously it's slightly better. If you get 75, then it's even more, and 100 is pretty much the gold standard where you're getting the best chance of a really good reward to drop. The only issue I face is because we didn't have that player specific loot, there was only one chest and only one player could open it, so hopefully that's not the case when the full game comes out. Now we're right at the end of the good, because this last thing I completely forgot. It wasn't mentioned in our presentation, it was only in the Q&A section after we played. But one of the biggest balancing issues when it comes to high rounds in Cold War is that you could craft an infinite amount of self revives, and this had to change in Black Ops 6, and it has. So you can now only craft 3 self revives in one singular game, meaning if you're doing a solo high round run, just like the old days, you only have 3 self revives, and that is it. I assume in co-op as well, it might also be limited to 3 per player, but either way, that is a balancing thing that needed to happen, and I think that's a massive W. Now, that was a lot of good things to talk about, and overall, I'm very excited and happy with the way that this game looks this year, but we also need to talk about some of the bads, because no game is perfect, and again, it's still very early days. A lot of this could change. There could be some balancing, some tweaks that they could make based on this feedback. I remember earlier in the video when I said that this basically felt a lot like Cold War Zombies. Well, I really meant it. It does feel like basically Black Ops Cold War Zombies 2.0. Now, I said this in the good, but some people might consider this bad simply from the fact that they might have expected this to feel like a completely new game rather than feeling too similar to a previous Zombies. I personally don't have any problem with it. I really like it, but again, that's just a thing that some people might pick up on. game? Well, some of the system changes that follow on from Cold War haven't changed, and that includes the point system. It's the same point system as what we got in Cold War, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, but when I played it, I did feel that gaining points was quite slow. That could have been due to the fact that I was playing in 4-player, and maybe they were taking a lot more of the zombies than what I was getting. But early on in the game, I didn't really feel like I was struggling to gain points, but as the game got on, I felt like it was actually a lot more harder for me to gain points. And obviously that could be because the zombies are a lot stronger, my gun is weaker, but I felt like there was just something slightly off with the amount of points that I was gaining. And then that goes hand in hand with some of the other things in the game now that you need to buy using points over using salvage, and that is armor wall buys. Now, I think changing armor to have a wall buy is in theory a good idea, because otherwise you're using a ton of salvage all the time to upgrade the armor when you could be using it for other things. But when you put the armor as a wall buy, the way they've done it is that there are different levels of armor at different parts of the map as a wall buy. So you start off with one armor plate, and then if you want to go ahead and get a level 2 armor plate, you need to spend 4,000 points off the wall. That is nearly as expensive as packer punching your weapon, which is crazy. Like, that is a lot of points. In my opinion, I feel like this should be toned down ever so slightly so it's not as expensive. And later on, when you find level 3 armor, if you want to go from level 1 to level 3, it costs 14,000 points, which is nearly the same cost as packer punching your gun twice. And going back to my previous point about it being quite slow in the sort of later rounds, round 10, maybe 12 onwards, gaining points, that is a lot of points that you're going to have to designate straight away to making sure that you have armor. Now, another fundamental issue with the armor system in Black Ops 6 Zombies from the build that I played is that zombies that drop armor plates are not automatically picked up and repairing your armor vest. In Cold War, this was an automatic thing, so you didn't have to think about it. In Modern Warfare Zombies, you didn't have that luxury, but we also had the golden armor plate carrier, which made that just regenerate, and we really got spoiled with how useful that became. But in this game, at its current state, from what I played, you have to manually hold that plating button every time to put armor plates back on, and I forgot to do this until quite late into the game, so I was wondering why I was taking hits so easily, when in fact it's because I hadn't repaired my armor vest by manually plating like you do in Warzone. By the time the full game releases, this might not be a problem anymore, but right now in the build that we played, that is going to be an issue that a lot of people are going to complain about, so I definitely think that should be addressed. Now, this next point again might just be from the fact that we've not had enough experience with this yet. We've only had one game, but this is something that I felt, I know Chopper specifically also shared the same thing, and that's that the difficulty curve felt a little bit off. It felt like at first the game was pretty easy. Our weapons were doing decent damage, but obviously it got to a point where you obviously needed to pack-a-punch, and we had that pack-a-punched weapon maybe by about round 14 maybe. It already felt like that weapon was very weak, like extremely weak, and at that point you still don't really have enough points to be able to double pack-a-punch. And then because of the point earlier about the point system being the same as Cold War, and it just felt quite slow because the weapons weren't very strong, it was actually quite hard to build up the points to be able to afford that double pack-a-punch, along with all the other things like the wall buys, the fact that you're upgrading your weapon's rarity level by using salvage, but now the ammo mods are now part of the arsenal machine, which costs salvage instead of points at the pack-a-punch machine, which I think makes sense, but there's now a lot more things that you're spending salvage on, and I didn't feel like you were earning enough salvage to be able to keep up with all the necessary upgrades you need to make in order to keep yourself stronger than the zombies. Potentially this ties in again with the fact that the player-specific drops weren't working in the build, so there was probably a lot more salvage around that I might have earned but didn't get the chance to pick up. And I think Treyarch simplifying the salvage so we don't have blue and green is a good thing because it makes it less complicated, but it makes you realize that the blue rarity salvage actually had a purpose, where that was specifically used to upgrade your weapon's rarity in the higher tiers, as well as upgrade your armor vest in the higher tiers, whilst the lower was used to buy a ton of score streaks. Whilst now you have what felt like significantly less salvage at that point in the game, but you had a ton more things that you needed to spend it on. But another thing was that ammo became a problem very quickly where in my 4-player game, game, I was the last player alive on round 19, and I was trying to clutch up the game. I'm running around the map, and I only have a Pack-a-Punch 1 weapon, and I'm trying my best to clutch up the round, but I'm just constantly running out of ammo. Now, again, in Cold War, the zombies drop ammo pouches, so you're never really running out of too much ammo. There's obviously like a give and take where eventually you're going to have to go and buy ammo from one of the ammo crates, but in this game, it felt like those ammo drops were non-existent. I had to use the ammo crates around the map, which obviously get more expensive the stronger and more upgraded your weapon is, which ties back in again with the point about the points and it just being quite slow to build points. So yeah, I was running out of ammo quite quick. Now, I am never one to ever hate when Treyarch introduced new perks, but I felt like Melee Macchiato just didn't feel that useful or that good as a perk. Don't get me wrong, I'm so happy that we have a new perk, and I'm gonna be running it because I'm obviously gonna buy every perk from the WonderFizz machine, but I didn't really find too much of a use for it, and I think it's the way that they have balanced this perk so it's not super OP, because the actual punch itself is quite slow. So it really is best designed for if you're going around a corner and a zombie just appears out of nowhere and you need to get rid of it, then you could just punch it and get it out the way. And I could eat my words in a few months' time where there could be some really great augment upgrades that make this perk incredible. And it wasn't very clearly mentioned by Treyarch, but there is now a dedicated melee weapon slot in both multiplayer and zombies. So if you hold the melee button, it's actually going to pull out that dedicated weapon, and this perk will increase the strength of that. So I don't know if we even had like a knife equipped where that could have made it stronger, but we only had the fists to use that you see in the gameplay. So maybe I just didn't get a chance to use it enough, but I just don't feel in the meta of perks that this is going to be the ultimate useful thing to have, you know? Now, there's one part in the B-roll gameplay that might have already played by now, and when we saw it at Treyarch presented to us, I was a little bit confused, and this is the new mutant injection system. So what this is it's a score streak that you can craft at the crafting table, which turns you into a zombie. Like, we see in the gameplay that you're turning into a mangler with this mutant injection. It's described as a support item, which makes you invulnerable and you can just slay the zombies out playing as a zombie. Now, by no means am I saying that this is a bad thing. This is an extremely cool thing and something which I think we've wanted to see for years. It was recently put in a custom zombies map where you could play as an elite zombie. So the idea, the concept of this, I am all for. This is really cool. But I'm putting it here in the bad section because I feel like it's just a little bit out of place in terms of everything else that the map has to offer. I feel like this is very much designed for the casual zombies players who would activate this and be so shocked and surprised that they can play as a zombie, because you are invulnerable for a little bit of time whilst you're in this, and it's a great way to take out the zombies in a fun way. But I just feel like with regards to the other features of the map, the vibe that they're going for, turning yourself into an actual zombie, I guess makes sense from an experimental point of view, but I just feel it's not quite necessarily as connected as the rest of the other map features and the vibe the map's going for. I guess we can compare this a little bit to when we first saw that you could equip a chopper gunner in Cold War Zombies. That seemed very alien, and maybe this is just another one of those where at first the concept of it seems a little bit alien, but once we get into the game and we use it, we get used to it, it will just be a thing that we will be using. But I do think that if this wasn't a support item and was so easily accessible and instead was like a side Easter egg where you could become a mangler, and it worked a bit like the spider Easter egg on Zetsubou no Shima where you could play as a spider, that would be really, really cool and a great interpretation of this in a slightly different style rather than it just be given to you. Again, I don't think it's a bad thing, but as a hardcore zombies player, and some of you watching the video that are hardcore players too, it is a little bit of a strange concept to wrap your head around. But I do think this tech is really cool, and I think if Treyarch are gonna go ahead and have more elite zombies playable throughout the year in Black Ops 6 Zombies via this feature, it would be so cool if they could use this to turn this into a new turned 2.0 mode that's a little bit like the Left 4 Dead versus mode, where you had real human players versus other real human players that were playing as elite zombies. I think that would be such a cool use of this technology beyond just being able to do this in standard round-based zombies. Perhaps that's something that they might look into in the future. Now, I know we're in the bad section of the video, and outside of what I've spoken from my gameplay experience, there isn't isn't really much at all that's bad, but the only thing that I'm going to point here about this extremely good new feature is one potential security risk with it, and that is the new guided mode. We spoke about it earlier, and I think this is an absolutely incredible addition to Black Ops 6 Zombies to allow a whole new audience of players to experience the story and the main Easter eggs, because the amount of people that even complete a main quest, let alone know there is a storyline in the Zombies maps that they're playing, is extremely small. But the one thing that I'm worried about with this is that even though it's a delayed release, which is absolutely perfect, that's the execution they should be going for, the fact it just exists in the first place is an opportunity for data miners to potentially find the in-text strings that relate to the actual steps themselves that will be on your screen in the guided mode in the files ahead or at the moment that a new Zombies map drops. I'm sure that Treyarch are doing their utmost to make sure this isn't possible, that it's just not a thing, but you just can't rule it out 100%. But overall, it was round-based zombies, classic zombies. It looked great, it felt great, it played great, and Terminus looks like a super fun map that's going to have a ton of replayability. And fundamentally, the game does guide you through how to unlock the Pack-a-Punch by completing the 3 electrical power things around the map. And for a sort of beginner entry-level zombies map where a lot of new players are going to be jumping in for the first time, I think they're really going to enjoy it because of the fact that it's quite a big map. There's a lot of depth to it, and there's quite a few playable areas beyond the main prison that some people just might not discover on their first playthrough, which I think is really cool and really special. It really feels like Treyarch are not afraid to experiment with Black Ops 6 this year, combining pretty much every good thing from Black Ops Cold War and every good thing from Black Ops 3 Zombies. And the fact we're talking so much already about this when we've not even seen the other Zombies map, which could have a completely different impression on me in terms of how the game feels and plays, because that's going to be a much smaller map, a much more brighter, much more open map, and what I expect to be a more approachable map compared to Terminus. But everything that's been said so far indicates that they're betting on Terminus being the main big launch Zombies map, and Liberty Falls is just the smaller other Zombies map offering on launch. So I'm really intrigued to see that, and I should be playing it at COD Next live at the end of August. So we've got tons of videos coming out on the channel from this video onwards, from more things shared from my trip to Treyarch, just more videos going over some of the more fundamental mechanics and changes, explaining exactly how they work. There's just going to be so much content here on the channel on the road to launch for Black Ops 6 Zombies that I would hate for you to miss any of it. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. This has been such a long video. Oh my god. If somehow you're still here, please like the video if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it, and leave all your thoughts and feedback on my impressions in the comments below and what you think from what you've seen so far.